So I used to have an addiction to arguing on the internet, especially about politics. And it cost me thousands of hours of my life and several friendships and a lot of hurt feelings. And how I realized I had a problem and kicked the addiction is a story for another time, but I want to talk about something that happened recently. So I have a friend who is a wonderful person in real life, but on the internet, he also has an addiction to arguments, way worse than I ever did. And he also has very extremist opinions, so that he basically disagrees with everyone about something. So he's always starting arguments and tends to argue in particularly unpleasant ways, such that even most of his closest friends have blocked him on Facebook at this point. And I'm one of the few people who hasn't. So recently, he made a post that kind of pushed my buttons, where he said that atheists are responsible for more deaths than all religions combined. His argument was basically he was blaming atheism for all of the atrocities committed by communist regimes like Stalin and Mao. And even though I shouldn't have, I responded to this and made the argument that this was ridiculous. It was akin to saying that Hitler was a vegetarian, so vegetarians are responsible for the Holocaust. And this started an argument that I got sucked into, which I shouldn't have done, but it happened. And we went back and forth for a bit, and then he pulled one of his favorite obnoxious tactics where he pretended I said something totally different from what I actually said and wrote a long response based on that. And then I wrote up a rant saying, this is why people always hate arguing with you, because you pull stuff like this. But I had a little voice in the back of my head wondering if it was a good idea to post that. And one of the techniques I use to avoid falling back into my addiction is whenever I hear that little voice, I'll email what I've written to myself instead of posting it, so that I can decide if it's actually a good idea to post it. And invariably, a few minutes or a few hours later, I'll decide it's not. So instead of actually sending that, I just wrote a short comment saying, if you're just going to make up stuff so you can argue against that, you can continue this conversation with yourself. So he wrote a long response to that saying, oh, are you denying this and this argument and that argument and such, and I just didn't respond. It takes two people to have an argument, and being in an internet argument is a rare problem that you can solve by literally doing nothing. So I thought that was the end of it. We stayed good friends. We were able to have civil Facebook discussions on other posts. But a few weeks later, my wife Alicia made a Facebook post about a sensitive topic that had nothing to do with politics. Now, Alicia is someone who absolutely hates politics on Facebook and arguments on Facebook, so much so that she stayed off Facebook entirely for 10 years just to avoid that, and only recently got back on it. And when she was writing this post, she actually said to me, gee, I hope no jerk starts some political argument about this. So anyway, after she wrote this post, I had to get onto a 5-hour flight. And when I landed, there was a text message from Alicia waiting for me saying, guess who started an obnoxious political argument on that post? So I saw that he had used it as an excuse to start beating one of his political hobby horses. And again, even though I probably shouldn't have, I responded. And I didn't address any of his political points. I just said, stop being a jerk. this isn't the right place for it. You know how much Alicia hates arguments about politics. And then I added another comment directed towards Alicia, but one which he could see, saying, if he responds with anything other than an apology, just block him on Facebook, because you shouldn't have to deal with this. So he didn't respond to that. And then a few days later, I realized I hadn't seen any of his Facebook posts recently, which is weird because he's usually posting several times a day. And I checked and saw that he had unfriended me. And this was concerning to me because he has some mental health issues, and I realized from his perspective, one of his best friends had just attacked him, and that could be kind of triggering. So I reached out to him to make sure he was okay. And he told me that he loved me and Alicia, and he had unfriended us on Facebook in order to preserve our friendship in real life. And I tried to talk to him about this, and I felt like he was isolating himself in a bubble on Facebook so that he was only seeing extremist opinions that he agreed with, and losing sight of the fact that people who had different political beliefs are generally normal and decent people. And I also tried to discuss my own past of an internet argument addiction and tried to make him see that the problem wasn't with other people, and the problem wasn't even with his political views, it was with the way he expressed himself that was in a, I guess there's really no other word but obnoxious way. But I really couldn't get through to him, and it's not like I could argue with him about how he shouldn't be arguing. Really, I realized that all I could do is continue to be a friend with him, a friend to him in real life, and continue to see him in real life. And I followed him on Facebook so that at least I could comment on his public posts to keep him from being too digitally isolated. But his addiction is his problem and not my problem. And as much as I'd like to help him, I have to accept that I can't help him unless he wants to help himself and unless he recognizes that he has a problem. So I just have to realize and accept that all I can do is remember my own history and my own past and keep myself from getting sucked back into my addiction. And I just have to accept that I can't help my friend until he realizes he has a problem and wants to be helped. I'm Steve Friedman, and I'm trying my best.
Thanks so much, Steve. I think we would be remiss if we didn't plug Steve's blog here. It's selfhelpingyourself.com?
Yes.
Okay, selfhelpingyourself.com. Steve also runs our self-help book club and hosts our mental health peer support group. He's great. He's a force.